Hi there, and welcome to Ian's Engage channel. I'm Ian. It's been an eventful year, and while it may not look like I've made much progress with my build, in this video I'm going to take a look back at what I've learned in 2023. Okay, so I started off the year learning that the Cricut Maker 3 is an excellent and incredibly useful bit of kit, which made building my micro servo motor housings possible. These housings will eventually be embedded into the foam base and will securely contain the micro servo motors that I'm going to use to operate my points. Unfortunately, while attempting to design the housings, I learned that Cricut Design Space, which is the software you have to use to control the Cricut machine, is possibly the worst piece of software I've ever had the displeasure of using. And I don't say that lightly, having spent nearly 40 years designing and implementing software professionally. Thankfully, I've also learned that I can use Inkscape, the free vector drawing application, to design things instead, meaning Cricut Design Space is only ever required to command the Cricut machine to perform the cutting. I learned that I needed more disk space. Since taking the decision to make videos in 4K, I've nearly quadrupled the amount of storage I need for both shooting and storing videos. I need bigger camera memory cards for capturing, more internal drive space for processing, bigger external USB drives for storage, and I also needed more camera phone memory for when using my iPhone to shoot video. All of these things have incurred added expense, so it was nice to reach the monetization threshold for the channel this year. Not that the big bucks have started rolling in. Yet. I began reviewing locos and rolling stock on the channel this year, and I've learned that it takes a lot of hard work. Testing the subject itself, taking photos and recording video footage of observations along the way, tracking down images of the prototype, gaining permission to use them, then constructing and writing the review, recording the voiceover, and finally producing the video of the review is all a lot to undertake. However, I've learned that I actually enjoy all of this work, so I'll continue to do them. During one of my reviews, I learned that the Engage Society had produced one of the best locos I'd ever encountered. Their little Hunslet really captured my heart with its tiny feature-packed frame and budget-friendly price. I was so taken with this little loco that I eventually purchased a second one. I've learned that the most asked question on the channel has been, where do you get your blue foam from? Incidentally, if you need to know, I now put Amazon affiliate links in the description of each video for nearly all of the products I've used during the build. I've learned that inclines on a layout can be easy to install, if you're using the right gear. The Woodland Scenics riser system makes installing inclines an absolute doddle, and I thoroughly recommend them to anyone who has to implement different levels on their layout. I've learned that procrastination is a good thing. As long as you're in no rush to achieve anything, of course. I know it's not for everyone, but I very much like to think things through. You may have noticed. Let's face it, I've been at this for nearly 2 years now, and I only just decided what track I was going to use. On a related subject, my favourite phrase of the year was mentioned by Chris of 4 Oak Street, who talked about the paralysis of analysis in one of his videos, which I think struck a chord with many of us railway modellers. I learned that cheap offcuts of plywood can sometimes be found in your local hardware store. In my case, my local B&Q offcuts bin supplied me with bits and pieces to both extend one of my baseboards and will also provide a couple of boards to mount the electronics on that will be wired at the rear of the layout. Eventually. However, I've learned that I also remain fearful of cutting plywood. And despite how many times I try and learn the dark art of using a jigsaw, my views on jigsaws remain the same. They are the work of the devil. I learned that having decided to go down the route of micro servo motors for point control, there were still lots of things to be figured out in order to control them using DCC commands. However, I now have a plan that I'll be discussing in a future video. I learned that moving trains up a curved incline introduced different problems to running them up a straight incline. and that the radius of a curve was just as important as the gradius of the incline. I also learned that pushing trains, rather than pulling them, could introduce problematic running situations, especially when running over points. I learned that set track curve points could cause issues for some short and some long wheelbase locos to cross. And for one particular piece of rolling stock, they proved disastrous. So, basically, I learned that however well you designed your track plan, derailment or other running issues could always rear their ugly head once the plan made contact with reality. I learned that purchasing second-hand rolling stock on popular auction sites could be a bit of a risk, when initially cheap-looking items weren't as described and required further investment to bring them back into working order. However, I also learned that sellers on popular auction sites are generally decent human beings, and honest mistakes can be made, and that partial refunds can be obtained when such mistakes are pointed out. I've learnt that fitting a DCC decoder to a DCC-ready locomotive is easy. Unfortunately, I also learned that gaining access to the decoder socket within the loco can be far from hassle-free. In similar news, I've learnt how poor the instructions generally are that are supplied with our locos, and that there is a general lack of information about getting into locos in the hobby, which can be very disconcerting for a beginner like me. I've learnt that streamline points rule. My long-term plan to use set track points in my marshalling yard was foiled by derailments occurring when pushing rolling stock over them. Streamline points came to the rescue, and I've had no such problems since. I've learned that DCC controllers aren't particularly reliable, and that it helps if you've got a backup. My DigiKey's DR5000's Wi-Fi module ceased to function after less than a year of use, and with the company now defunct, I've begun to use an NCE power cab that I originally intended to use for a future test track. Staying with controllers, I've learned that it can be handy to have a DC controller on hand for running in those DCC-ready locos that you haven't got around to DCC fitting yet. I also learned how to wire up my test track so I could operate it using DCC or DC. I've learned that going to model rail shows can take a lot of organising, takes a lot of energy, and isn't cheap. However, I've learned that they are brilliant to attend and hugely rewarding, especially when you get to meet up with other YouTubers, and even better when you snag a few bargains. I've learned that purchasing new, ready-to-run models can be very frustrating, with some models not being ready to run at all. It wasn't just new models that caused me frustration this year, with the previously fixed Class 08 pickup problems returning after nearly a year of hassle-free running. I've learned that building a rake of rolling stock that you remembered travelling in as a youngster can be most rewarding and can bring back many happy memories. There's no denying that I've learned a lot about N-gauge track this year, whether it be set track or streamline, code 80 or code 55. I've performed a ton of research and performed lots of practical tests. I learned that code 55 medium radius streamline points are actually longer than code 80 medium radius streamline points, which meant that a redesign of my track plan would be required if I wanted to use code 55. I learned all about unifrog points and how much better they were than insulfrog points, and how much easier they were to install and wire than electrofrog points. I finished off the year where I started, with the Cricket machine, as I learned how to make tracksetter-like track templates to help bring code 55 flexible track under my control. I then used them to help me construct a small test track to practice working with code 55 track. And once I'd tested my fleet of locos, I learned that I really wanted to use Code 55 to build Shelfington. Finally, over the course of this year, I've learned a lot about video production and have tried to present coherent, concise, informative and hopefully interesting and entertaining videos that have explained my N-gauge model railway journey. Unfortunately, video production on Ian's N-gauge channel may not always have been the well-oiled machine that I like to think it is. Hi there, and welcome to Ian's N-gauge channel. I'm Ian. In a previous video, I described my plan for tickling the tricky bit. Oh, Ian. Hi there. Hi there, and welcome to Ian's. Welcome to Ian's. Come in, have a beer. Oh, God. In a previous video, I described my plan for tackling the tricky bit of track work at the rear there. That's a bit of a tongue twister, this one. Hi there, and welcome to Ian's N-gauge channel. Am I Ian? I am Ian. I'm Ian. Oh, for the love of God. How difficult is this? I can't get past the first two sentences. In a previous video, I described my plan for tackling the tricky bit of track work at the rear of the layout, behind the scenic breakboard. That'll do. Come on, Ian. This time, you'll get it right. Right. Hi there. Hi there, and welcome to Ian's N-gauge channel. I'm Ian. Yes. Okay, so that's about it for this year. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for watching, liking, commenting and subscribing, and wish you all the very best for 2024. Hopefully I'll have lots of new stuff to share with you in the new year, and you never know, I might even finally begin to lay some track. Bye.